Hi everyone, um happy beautiful day. I'll quickly go into the topic of today because it's a bit gonna be a bit long, so but don't worry if you cannot stay and finish it, that's fine. You can always come on and watch it later. So let's go straight into the topic. So I hope you're having a beautiful day. Now, the topic today, things what I want to handle today is racism, and the world order. It's important that we understand these things so that we be able to know how to apply ourselves to the events of the world and the events of the things that are happening around us. Oftentimes, we find ourselves reacting to things without understanding them, and it can become so overwhelming for us, our psychology, our the rest of our lives and the things that we continue to do. So you can find out that, okay, like for example, now the death of George Floyd, which we now see, if you think back, you can find out that 4 years ago we had Eric Garner in the US. The same words, "I can't breathe," was what made everybody were reacting and protesting and moving around and trying to fight for justice. But today, the things I'm going to talk about today will begin to explain to us why these things continue to happen despite all the outcry, the world screaming and everything. And mind you, I'm speaking based on somebody who was born and who grew up in Nigeria, and somebody who now lives, who has spent over a decade in the UK. Now, first of all, first and foremost, you need to understand that racism, just as terrorism, just as sexism, or all any ism you can think about, are all ideologies. Even religion is an ideology. So it's only when you understand that these things are an ideology or are ideologies, that's when you begin to wrap your head around this. And what is an ideology? An ideology is just a person's idea, whether it's good or whether it's bad. And you cannot fight an ideology. You cannot fight an ideology. What you can do is you can change an idea through education. You cannot change what you don't understand. And when I say education, I'm not talking about the current formal education that we have now. To be honest, the world order and the world that we run in, the way it is now, is the product. The education we have now is the product of these same things that we are fighting, and we all are investing in this type of education, which continues to conceal the truth about what we are fighting. Now, the current education conceals the history of the world, the true history of the world. And for us to be able to change some of the ideas or ideologies that we have, we need to understand them through history. So that is why it is important that history is told, and told very well. And for this, for the formal education that we are having now globally, not only in UK or US or in the Western world, but in Africa, in Asia, in the Arab world, and every part of the world, we must first of all tackle the issue of history in the curriculum. It's important that we understand the curriculum of the history of the world, and make sure that it's applied fairly and not fairly, truthfully. Because when people understand history, that is when they will understand the mistakes and the good things that they can continue to apply. If not, that is why we continue to see the events happening on and on, repeating itself. Now, for example, let's talk about slavery. While I was in Nigeria, I was never taught slavery in the school. I only began to know in depth about slavery when I came here. And now the part of slavery I know is the story of the slavery from probably slave descendants when they talk about their pain and the things they struggle with. I don't know history of slavery from the point of what was the part that Africans themselves, the African indigenes, did they play any part in the slavery time, for example? I'm not going to focus on that one. I have some just bear with me, because I have some points that I've written down so that I don't miss out anything. You know, like I said, until we redesign the educational curriculum to be able to give accurate history, we are unable to understand now and unable to plan our future. You know, some people call it the educational system, or the world system that we have now, they call it brainwashing. I hate to use that word, because if you understand that you have been brainwashed, then you have to do something about it. So it's important that we humans begin to question things and begin to ask, what am I being taught? And we saw this played out few days ago, just yesterday actually, where in UK here, where the racists, where, you know, they said they were going to protect the statues of Winston Churchill, who fought the far right. Now, these are far right people who are organizing themselves to fight people who they see as their enemy. Without knowing the history of the so-called man, they want to protect his status. Now, he fought the Nazis, but you people came there and were saluting him with the Nazis. Nazi salute. You know, and in fact, doing the things that he fought against in your own favor history that you want to present. And then also the other side of it, you see some white people who believe that they are not racist, but because they don't know the true history of Winston Churchill, they are defending him with their lives. They don't, many British people do not know that Winston Churchill was instrumental to the death and genocide of millions of Kenyans and Indians and Pakistanis. These are not taught in their school. In fact, I called my children and asked them, what do you know about Winston Churchill? Have you been taught about him in your school? And they gave me all these glorifications and things. And that also takes me back to Nigeria, where we were taught. We used to sing, Lord Baden-Powell, he was a leader, blah, blah, blah. This is the founder of the Scouts, the Boy Scouts. He was glorified. Only until now, we're beginning to know that he was actually a racist. Real racist, somebody who believed that other human beings were not humans. We are not human enough. We are not, the other races were not good breeds and stuff like that. So this is why it is important that even the people that we call racists here, we need to begin to, you know, even pity them, because they don't even know their history. And that is why you see them defend what they don't know with their chest. And we who are looking for change are making more mistake by, you know, fighting. So that is why it's also important that the vocabularies that we use, you know, these days people say they are woke. Now, but what I would tell you is, you focus on understanding, learning. You know, not from what people say, but what you can research on your own and find out the behind the scene, the motives and the activities that happened that led to a particular thing. Now, for example, the issue of racism in the Western world came about around was it 1681, after a rebellion where the poor people, and they called them the white poor indentured people. Those are the people who used to farm, who used to do the farming and the laborer work, and the slaves that were brought from Africa or wherever. That time they were white indentured people. These were poor people, and then they used to sign an agreement to work in the plantation for many years. They are not paid, and then after so many years of their contract, then they will get their freedom and be able to own something. Now they found themselves in the same plight with freed slaves who have been freed, because when they come out, they find out that the king and his just like the same 1% that we have now, who are the capitalists, as for them at that time, were the plantation owners and the elites and the rulers and all that. They have taken everything. There was nothing left for you. So now you are told that you are free. You're no longer an indentured person, or you're no longer a slave, but you don't have right of possession. You don't have anything. And these people, both the white and the black, they organized themselves and rioted and fought hard. The rebellion lasted for over a year, and after that rebellion, these people came up with an idea on how to make sure this does not happen again. And that is why I'm saying now that even this time we are seeing a form of race revolution, we also have to be ready for what is coming, because there is going to be a pushback, a stronger pushback. We are going to see even more deaths, more unjustified deaths, because these people are seeing that things are, some of the things that they call history and stuff are beginning to be questioned. So, and as we continue to question and change this thing, there's going to be a pushback. Now, it's important that you understand the history of a particular thing, so that you'll be able to teach and be able to learn and be able to unlearn some of those things. Now, this is for in the Western world. Now, in Nigeria, for example, there are so many again, this is a word I don't like using, tribes, because when you look at tribe, this is also very important. Tribe is something that is used in describing a collection of animals in a specific place. Now, since I came to the UK, I've never seen the UK describe themselves with the word tribe. I've never seen them describe themselves with the word ethnicity. Now, again, these are words that they use in dehumanizing every other person. Like, for example, I do see here, when a black person does something, you will see in the media, the person will say, the person will be described, a black man did this. Now, when is a white person, you will see a man. Now, it's only white people in the context of the world order that we have now that are described, that do not have any description except that they are human. I don't know if you get that. Now, if it's a black person, you say black woman, black. Therefore, then, like in America now, we have American Asian, we have American Hispanics, we have American African Americans, we have all those kind of sub, they add something, suffix and prefixes to their own Americanism, except for the white people who do not have anything fixed to their own Americanism. So that means invariably we all agree, unanimously, that the white people own America. Now, even the indigenous of America, call them indigenous Americans. Therefore, they are not Americans. So this is a problem. Now, when we come down to Nigeria, now, we have the Igbos, we have the Yorubas, we have the Hausas and all that. Now, but when we, in school, we are not taught the true history of our country. How did the name of the country come about? How did all these cultures, how did they come to bind together to become one? You know, those histories, the only history I can still remember that I learned in school is the Kanem Borno Empire. You know, what about the other empires? What about how did the white man come into Nigeria? What of the fights between the Nigerians and the white people? We don't have those histories. We allow the Western history, their own curriculum in the history, to continue to guide what we learn in our own land. So these are a problem. So these are problems that we continue to face, which continues to perpetuate those narrative of we accepting where we are asked to stay. I will get to this as well. Now, many people, you know, find it difficult to learn. And when you talk about learning, people think you're talking about having PhDs in science and in whatever. The most important learning you need to learn is understanding who you are, understanding your history, and understanding where you come from. Why are things happening the way they're happening? Sociology. You know, you need to question so many things. I used to question a lot of things. And, you know, while I was in Nigeria, I used to question so, you know, robustly. I used to question religion a lot. I used to question and ask the question that, why am I a Christian? Why am I a Catholic? How did I become a Catholic? How did my ancestors become a Catholic? How did I ask a lot of questions? I asked about God. You know, does it mean the God we serve and the God that the Jewish or maybe the whatever religion they serve is not the same thing? Don't we have, is it not one God that created every human being? You know, and in my own quest, I found out that everybody practices their religion based on the culture and the belief that they have. Now, if you watch how the Arabs practice their Muslim, compare it to how the Africans practice Muslim, completely different. Now, check how Christians in the Western world, how they practice their Christianity, and how Africans practice their own Christianity, completely different. Again, now it depends now on what they learn along the line and what they believe to be their culture. They will apply it into their religion. I also used to question wealth and possession, you know, because the way people acquire wealth and own wealth was contrary to what the Christian faith was teaching. You know, if we are supposed to if you are supposed to be our what do you call it now, the helping one another, you know, your brother's keeper or something like that. So why would you amass so much wealth and other people don't have anything to eat? You know, you see some places, people will have massive houses, might even have 10, 20 houses, but their brothers and sisters don't even have. You still see homeless people. Like in the UK, there are so many millions of homeless people in the UK, yet we have billionaires. You know, so you have to question, what are these? Then I used to also question power, leadership, rulership, government, and all that. Then I also used to question beliefs, which I've said, culture, tradition. What makes up a culture? You know, so most times these things, you know, are natural ways of organization and orderliness. But because of our own selfishness, human selfishness, greed, and quest to dominate, we misconstrue all of these things. For example, culture, you know, culture which comes from tradition. Now, culture usually is your relationship with your nature. The nature around you is what forms your culture. For example, now in the Western world, they have code. There is there are different times of the year when they have code, and therefore they have culture of changing how they dress. For example, now in our own culture, we are almost always in the heat or whatever, which also forms how we react. If you watch, we are laid back. We are when we walk, we don't walk with so much energy, because you are gonna be exerting more energy when you do that. So we already have a lot of the sun and everything, but here, to keep up with your own energy, especially during winter, you must walk briskly and fast. So their nature has formed some of the things, their lifestyle, their culture and everything. So but because of the kind of education that we have, we tend to copy, lifestyle and culture of other places, which does not suit our nature, which does not correspond with the world around us. And it is all these things that we copy and paste and all that causes us to continue to even enslave ourselves. Now that I mentioned slave and enslave, I also always question, how come the Western world, the white man, came to Africa or Nigeria? I don't want to say Africa, because you can't just bring 54 or more nations and just give them one tag. Now, how come they came to this place? In my own imagination, mind you, I haven't been taught formally the history of this, how the slavery started, but I will tell you a little bit of what I know, especially from what my grandfather told me. Now, I used to imagine, now, I don't think there were up to 100 people that came from the what's it called, from here to enslave Nigerians, or even to colonize Nigerians. Remember, that time there were no airplanes. Highest, they were coming with their boats, the ship and all those kind of through the rivers and sea. Now, how come they were able to manipulate us enough to sell our own people to them? Now, what I learned from my grandfather, those days, those olden times, people used to sell each other. People were selling their brothers and their children. People used to sell their children. So it wasn't the white man who started slavery. I'm not trying to exonerate the white man. I'm not trying to exonerate slavery. I'm not trying to exonerate anybody. I'm trying to make you understand how slavery started, because if we don't understand some of the things that are happening to us, we cannot change it. Many people do not know that some parents willingly sold their children, probably because they believe that those children were not they were stubborn, or they were not obedient enough, they were not hardworking and all of that. And that also tells you that even till today, our people are still selling ourselves. Check trafficking, human trafficking. Check how many women every single day are trafficked to the Arab world and to so many other places. Check how many families are willing to let their children begin to take a journey that they do not have idea of. Check, just recently we all saw what is happening in Libya. How our Africans, our families, our youths, we are leaving our home to go through deserts, to go and die there, and sometimes end up becoming slaves. So these are things that are happening because we have never studied, or we have never been taught, or we have, abolished the way our elders and grandparents and parents used to tell us stories of how the world operates. So the whole of these things, how long the Black people and African nation has been oppressed, is singularly hinged on the type of education we continue to have. You cannot change what you don't understand. You cannot change what you don't know. So that is why it is important that we have the responsibility to find out the truth and make sure that our children know the truth and know how to apply themselves to the truth. Now, I'm moving again to race, ethnicity, and tribe. Like I said earlier, I've never seen a white person describe themselves with any ethnicity or tribe. You know, even race, when they themselves don't call themselves white, except for now, they don't usually use color to describe themselves, you know, but they call every other person white. Then, and the black people, so-called black people, why do we, you know, accept, at what point did we start answering black? And what was the motive of giving us the color black, calling us black? What was the motive? Because throughout the Bible, I never saw anywhere anybody was described as black or white. Highest I saw was where, you know, when they were describing Moses, they described the woolly hair, described the golden brass or whatever of his skin, or describing the skin as earth, that it looks like the earth. They never called color. And then you now come down to Sussex. What do you call Sussex? What do you call being, what is victory, and who is the victim? You know, how do we come about all these words? And then you come down to gender, you know, and the gender roles that we take. How do they come about? You know, as I reflect on all of this, you know, I can relate them, you know, on our own relationships with how we all shape our own lives. You know, so you find out that the racism, you know, is as a result, is simply, you know, emanates from hatred, greed, and fear. Three things. It emanates from hatred, greed, and fear. Now, first of all, I think it has to be greed. Now, when somebody is greedy, the person wants everything for himself. Now, he becomes fearful. Now, you use greed to acquire everything. Now, you become fearful that this person might come and take it. That fear now grows into hate, which is now racism that we see. And now, you know, and this is how I was telling, I and my husband were discussing about race and all these kind of things sometime before. And I was telling him, I said, all the isms that you see are the same thing. They emanate from the same purpose, from the same factors. If you talk of sexism, if you talk of, you know, all the isms, they all emanate from the same place: fear, greed, and hate. And the whole concept, you know, is to, you know, is to conquer, divide and conquer. And why do you divide something? You divide something to dominate it. You divide something to control it. You divide something to, you know, to be able to steal and lord over those things. For example, when I bring it down to our own place in Nigeria, Igbo land, now you find out that so many things women are not allowed to do it. Even down here, just about 100 years ago, that was only when women were allowed to play football. In the Saudi Arabia, only last year, women were allowed to drive a car. In fact, I don't know if, I think up till now, a woman is not allowed to even hold her own passport. For a woman to travel in Saudi Arabia, it has to be there has to be a man. Sometimes that man might be like, now my son is just about less than 2 years. That man could be a child that you gave birth to. Now, you see how humans, you know, create issues and use it to control a certain group of people. What makes racism the worst is because of the scale of it. Because it's, you know, like for example, in Igbo land, that there are some times when where it's said that a woman cannot use idioms and proverbs. But there's an age you will get to, or when you have had children, your children have grown and everything. So some of those things cannot apply to you anymore, because people now know. You see what I told you? People now know that you have people who can defend you, and they'll back off. And when you have money also, you find out that those so-called culture will not apply to you. So that tells you that that's not true. Now, and then when you come, my line of thought has, it has escaped me. So, but what I'm trying to say here is, you find out that some of the things that are holding us down, we can clearly see that they are not true. They are not true. So because we don't ask questions, because we don't reason beyond that, because we don't, discuss these things, and this is where the so-called good people who don't open up, who don't talk, who know the truth, but they will not teach the truth. They will not tell people the truth. They will not show. The Facebook is telling me that my internal storage is this is the first time I'm hearing about it. So I'm going to round up, and perhaps maybe tomorrow I'll continue from where I stopped. So what I'm trying to say is, some of the philosophies that guide our education, our cultures, our religion, these are ideas from sociopaths, and psychopaths who make up these things just to justify their greed. And we run off with some of these ideas and begin to, use them as our own, form our own opinions and our own beliefs and stuff like that. For example, now, I tell people, say, look, you are no more than a racist if your interaction with people, your respect or disrespect of people is based, you base it on either the person's educational qualifications, or their economic status, or their religion or political affiliations, or accent, language, or culture, or ethnicity, or their gender. If it's what informs how you relate with people, you are no better than a racist. So these are things we need to understand. And you need to have to ask yourself, why do I react like this to people who are, who have different things? For example, probably you have PhD. All of a sudden, you believe that somebody who had a BSc or who didn't go to university is no longer a human being. So until we begin to see people as human beings and judge them based on the content of their character, just like Martin Luther King said, then we have a huge problem. Very huge problem. The world will not change. Racism will never end. Racism is not going to end. As long as we have tribalism still on, we have religious, whatever is still on, people still fight based on their religious beliefs. Even so-called Christians, you see Catholics and let's say Redeem, and people just fight based on, you are not a member of my own denomination. People just fight because you're not, you don't believe in Allah, you don't believe in God, you don't believe in Jesus Christ. As long as your debate or your fight is still based on that, just know that racism is not going anywhere, and you're no better than the people you accuse of racism. The difference between racism and all of these ones is that for race, whether you are a man or a woman, or you are rich or you're poor, or you have all the highest education, or you're a leader, or you are an elite in your own community, and this color indicts you. That is what makes it worse than any other thing. And that is why you see everybody's talking about it. Because they know that that little power they have over, let's say for a black man, that little power he has over a black woman, once it comes to the general race issue, he doesn't have it. If you want to check what I'm saying, go and check some of the I don't want to mention them, but some of the black men who say they fight so much about racism and all that, go and check them, how misogynistic they are. They are quick to put down women. They are quick to put down people who don't believe in their own religion. These are where the issues are. The problem we have to focus on are the fears. Why are people fearful? Why are people greedy? How do we create a system that will not allow people to be so greedy? Okay, look at now. We find it so acceptable that somebody will be making gain of 100 and 200, 300 billion from a business, yet people who work in those companies cannot afford to pay for their home, cannot afford to send their children to school. And we as a society, we accept it. So you find out that what is the difference between this 1% capitalists and the 1% slave traders who made amassed a lot of wealth then? What is the difference? Why do we accept this? And now everybody's struggling to become a billionaire, which is leaving people, you know, people are now killing and doing every immoral thing to become also a billionaire. So we have to question the society we live in. We have to question the good people who don't talk. They are the most violent ones, because this evil that is ruling the world, like we said, is only 1% of people. 1%. So what is 99% of people doing? If up to 10% of humans begin to teach people with love and show them the real truth, I'm telling you, racism, genderism, and whatever ism and all these kind of things will definitely disappear, because that is how we change things. We change things by introducing a better idea. I will end here now because my system is giving me some kind of problem. I don't understand. I haven't seen this before, but I know I've spoken for a long time. So tomorrow or next, or I don't know when, but I'm not going to give you exact dates. I will continue from where I stopped and then tell you more about the way forward. How can Black people begin to tackle especially racism? And I will tell you that, see, racism in particular will not end in... Okay, I will end now because this thing has warned me again, so I don't lose the one I've just thought about. So thank you so much all for listening. Please share the video, and if you have any question or anything you want me to discuss next, please do send your comments. Thank you.